Hello everybody, my name is Stratnos, and today we're going to take a look at all of the exciting new items I could find coming in the new patch. So not the tier sets, nothing like that, none of the appearances, but we are going to take a look at all the trinkets from the raid, the trinkets from the new dungeon. There's a new trinket they've added to one of the returning dungeons as well that we'll take a look at. And we'll take a look at all the weapons with special effects and the very rare items that come out of the raid as well. So let's start with the raid. Up first, we've got a bunch of galley bucks, which are the new tier tokens. Normally, I wouldn't look at all of the items that are regular, but in this video, we're going to because so many of them have like flavor text or funny names. So I just want to kind of appreciate that. And so we'll do that as we go through these. Then there's the excessively bejeweled curio here, which is actually relevant. This looks like it's going to be an Omni token. So even though they are changing the achievement to no longer award an Omni token, you used to get an Omni token, which could turn into any piece of heroic tier from getting Keystone Master or Ahead of the Curve or 1600 in PvP or something. That's turning into a Catalyst charge, but it looks like Gallywix is still going to drop Omni tokens, presumably in the same way that, all the other end bosses have since they've added these things. Keys to the Big G, that's a new mount, a big Gallywix looking head thing with a cigar in it. Extremely cool. Mythic mount, I think, from Gallywix. Then some more of these galley bucks, the bloody galley bucks, the greased, gilded, rusty, polished galley bucks, all the different kinds. Then we get to the weapons. So there are some weapons with special effects, such as this, the Capital Punisher that drops from Gallywix. It's a Galley Tech limited edition. And there are all three of the Galley Tech limited edition weapons it looks like they all drop at 672. I don't think all of them drop from Gallywix. We'll see more of them later. And they have the same equip effect here, which says your attacks have a very high chance to contaminate your target with industrial runoff up to 25 times, dealing shadow damage per stack every 3 seconds until their demise. So this just stacks up a smallish shadow dot that will then tick until the target dies. Stacks up a little bit at the start of the fight, and then a little bit of extra consistent damage. Pretty small number on the shadow damage here, so even that times 25 every 3 seconds it's not going to break the bank one way or the other, but it's a nice little extra bonus on these things. There's a strength two-hander that does that. Let's just read the names on all these things. So there's the Alpha Coil Baboom Stick, which is just a mastery crit int staff. There's the Dumpster Diver, which is a two-handed strength axe. There's the Giga Bank Breaker that drops from the One-Armed Bandit. This one is a two-handed Agi Polearm, so Feral Druids, Serve Hunters, Windwalkers, Brewmasters, all that kind of stuff can use this. There's the Grease Monkey's Shift Stick, which is a two-handed Agi Staff, Haste Verse. The Big Earner's Bludgeon, so this is another Galley Tech limited edition. It drops from Muggsy, Heads of Security, which is the second to last boss, but it's also 672 Galley Tech limited edition. This is a one-handed int mace with that same effect of the stacking shadow damage until the target dies. There's the Blast Furious Machete, which drops from the first boss, so this is a nice one if you are a one-handed int user that likes crit haste. You can get one of these just off of the first boss. The word family is etched into its hilt. So I assume this is a Fast and Furious reference. Blast Furious. First boss is car themed. Crowd favorite is a one-handed fist weapon, a verse haste fist weapon from the second boss. So if you're a fist weapon user, verse haste enjoyer, that's nice that one of those is available early on into the raid. Gallywix's Iron Thumb is another Galley Tech limited edition piece. This one drops from Gallywix. It's a one-handed Agi Mace, haste crit. The Gigadeath Chainblade is just some mastery crit warglaves off of the fifth boss, at least in Dungeon Journal order. The Pyrotechnic Needle Dropper, just a mastery verse Agi Dagger. The Random Number Perforator is a crit mastery Agi Dagger. The Remixed Ignition Saber is a one-handed strength sword, crit haste, off of the third boss. Styx's Metal Detector is a one-handed int dagger, haste mastery, fourth boss. Then Wise Guy's Refused Offer is a nice, from the second to last boss, but it's a one-handed strength mace, mastery crit. Tiny Pal drops from the second to last boss. This is another Galleytech limited edition. This one's a gun, and it's a crit mastery gun as well with this Galleytech limited edition. Presumably going to be extremely sought after by those. I know hunters are big fans of crit mastery. At least one of the specs is. Then the Tournament Arc is a haste crit bow that drops off of the second boss. Frontman's Wondrous Wall is a shield. This one's crit verse. Not the best stats for a lot of shield enjoyers, although maybe for the casters, because of course it's strength and int. The Titan of Industry, on the other hand, is another Galleytech limited edition. This is a Galleytech limited edition haste crit shield. So pretty much every spec is going to be able to get one of these Galleytech limited editions eventually. The effect here is, it looks small enough to me that it might not be worth sacrificing BIS stats for if you're getting bad stats, but presumably they're going to be pretty good, and pretty good for everybody, and BIS for probably most people will be your Galleytech limited edition options. The Operator's Fraud Detector, just a one-hand, or an offhand thing. Same with the Superfan's Buzzer Beater. Then we get to helmets, so the Cleanup Crew's Waste Mask, the Dark Fuse Racketeer's Tricorn, the Full Throttle Face Rig, the Sanitized Scrap Hood, are all the helmet options, so one helmet option per armor type off of various bosses. The necklaces, we've got Mastery Haste, very heavy Mastery Haste, the Gobfather's Gilded Bling, and the flavor text here is an offer they couldn't refuse, a reference that probably the majority of the WoW player base is now aging out of getting. Well, I guess this is probably enough in the culture, but a very old film at this point. Semi-Charmed Amulet is a haste crit amulet, and this one's to get you through this is the flavor text on that one. Don't know what that is referencing. Then we've got the Epaulets of Failed Enforcers, the Pay Dirt Pauldrons, the Underboss's Tailored Mantle, and Vandal's Skull Plating are our shoulder options. Our cloaks, it looks like there's just the one cloak in the non-very rare section here. The Under Circuit Racing Flag, crit haste one from the first boss, so pretty similar to, I guess, Nerebar Palace, which also had a cloak off the first boss and then a very rare. The Streamlined Cartel uniform is a Gallywix drop, leather chest piece, and then the Bulletproof Vest Plate is from the second last boss instead. This one's Haste Mastery Plate chest piece. This is going to be very high demand for a lot of the plate tanks. And this one does have flavor text. See the bullet holes? That's the proof. So it's got bullet holes. That's proof. I see. It's proof that it has bullets in it or something. One thing that bothers me is this one has quotes, and this one just has apostrophes, right? This has single quotes. This one has double quotes. I don't know. That inconsistency, especially because they're right next to each other in the Dungeon Journal, that's bothering me. Then we've got the Blazer of Glory, great name. The Bottom Dollar Blouse, great name. Those are our chest pieces. Then for bracers, we've got the Galvanic Graffiti Cuffs, the Hustler's Anti-Uppers, the Illicit Bankroll Bracers, and the Killer Queen's Wrist Flickers. And then we actually have another... Is this... Well, okay, so there's two leather bracers, and then we've got the Maid Manacles. Maid Man, okay, gangster reference again. Revved Up Van Braces are another plate bracers. Okay, so there's actually just two for each armor type, which makes sense because there's no tier piece in the bracers. The Test Subjects Clasps, which are plate ones, and don't take them off. Might need to identify your body. And look at this thing. This has got... The flavor text has double quotes and then single quotes. That's weird. Then we've got the Underparty Admission Bracelet. And then we're on to gloves. So for gloves, we have the Dump Mech Compactors, the Enforcer's Sticky Fingers, the Golden Handshakers, and the Gravagunk Handlers. For belt, we've got the Coin-Operated Girdle, the Competitor's Battle Cord, the Dealer's Covetous Chain, and the heaviest weight title belt with the flavor text King of Carnage. All right, then we've got more belts. We've got the Refiner's Conveyor Belt. We've got the Sash of the Fierce Diva, the Tune-Up Tool Belt, And it looks like that's it. Oh, and the Hitman's holster as well. So again, 2 per armor type. For pants, we've got the Bilge Rat's discarded slacks, the deep-pocketed pantaloons, the Hired Muscles leg guards, and the Pit Doctor's petticoat. For feet, we've got the cemented Murloc swimmers. Okay, so like, cemented feet thing makes sense. The Cutthroat Competition stompers, the Dragster's last stride, one last stride. Okay, I think again that's maybe Fast and Furious reference. Dubious table runners, the Hot Step heel turners, Rick's walking boots. It's what they're made for. The rushed beta launch. The rushed beta launchers, and the shrapnel-ridden Sabatons. Okay, for rings, we've got 2 rings from the raid in the non-very rare section. The Fated Championship ring, which is very crit heavy, crit haste. It's I got one more in me. So this is a reference to the meme, the I got one more in me meme. The Miniature Roulette Wheel, which has 2 random stats, and +1 luck, and spin to win. Such a great ring. Also, this is going to be turbo bis for everybody if you get the right stats on it. So, because this is extremely heavily budgeted towards 1 stat. So, if you can get this on haste or master or whatever your stat is, you're going to be extremely happy. Okay, on to the trinkets. We've got the Chrome Bustable Bomb Suit, which drops from Gallywix. This is a haste trinket. On use, you rapidly deploy the bomb suit to reduce damage taken by 75% for 20 seconds or until 10.3 million at base mythic eye level. Damage has been prevented. Upon depletion, the bomb suit detonates to deal about 1 million fire damage split between nearby enemies. So not a significant amount of damage generally, especially going into next tier, but a massive shield, right? Like this, it's going to be quite hard to die after pressing this. That's a lot of HP even next tier. Eye of Kazan also drops from Gallywix. This is a mastery trinket, and it says your spells and abilities have a high chance to empower the eye and grant you strength up to 20 times. I don't know if this one changes with your... I can't even change whether I'm a strength user on this character, so I don't know whether this one changes to other... Actually, I guess I could check. Let's just quickly check to see if this is on the rogue. Yeah, okay, so it's going to change to at least Agi, and let's check to see if it's on the mage one. And okay, so this will change to whatever your primary stat is what we've learned from that. It's a mastery trinket. You have a proc chance to get stacking main stat up to 20 times, decaying rapidly upon leaving combat. When you're fully empowered, instead of gaining stats, it either deals damage to enemies or heals allies. So it ramps up for a little bit, and then later into combat, it's a full-on stat stick that is also just proccing random bonus damage. Presumably, this is going to be extremely good. This is the kind of effect that is almost always really, really good. A little fiddly in situation, like in a really short boss fight during farm, it might not get its full potential, right? But it's sort of like a Spymaster's Web, except instead of being able to click Spymaster, you just don't. You just have full stacks, and then when you're at full stacks, you're getting bonus damage instead. We've got the Florendo's Pilot Light. This one is off of the second boss. It's a haste trinket. Reignite the Pilot Light to gain intellect for 15 seconds. After casting 3 harmful spells, it unleashes a beam dealing 2.5 million fire damage to your primary target and 200,000 damage to up to 5 enemies in its path. So this is just a haste. It's a 3-minute CD, so not an awful lot of 3-minute specs left in the game, although there are some 90-second specs that would presumably like this thing as well. And yeah, you're going to get big damage, so this is a big on-use, primary stat effect. Then we've got the Galagio Bottle Service, which contains 0.01% Kajamite, and this one is a haste trinket. On use, it's a 90-second cooldown. You become the pinnacle of Galagio's service excellence, and dole out Kaja-Cola Mega Light to injured allies 10 times over 4 seconds, healing them for actually quite a bit, given that this is going to be 10 times over 4 seconds, a little bit over 500,000, and increasing their speed by 2,200, so not actually an insignificant amount of speed either. And the number of servings is increased by your haste, so it's a haste-based healing trinket. If you are a haste-enjoying healer, then you press this, you're going to throw out a lot of healing. However, it is just kind of flat healing. It's not going to increase your stats besides just the passive haste. We've got the Gear Grinder's Spare Keys. This is all main stats from the first boss. And it's a 2-minute on use, launch a Gear Grinder trike to its final blaze of glory, exploding upon impacting the first enemy in its path to deal 1.3 million fire damage split between all nearby enemies. So pretty low budgeted trinket, presumably, but also works for everybody. So I doubt this will be best for anybody, but I bet it's not going to be bad for anybody. Not going to be that bad for anybody either. The House of Cards is a nice trinket from the One-Armed Bandit. This is also any primary stat. On use, a 2-minute CD, deal yourself in, granting yourself between 7 to 10,000 mastery for 20 seconds, and stacking the deck. Stacking the deck increases the minimum mastery on future hands by 447 until you leave combat up to 3 times. So once you've stacked the deck a bunch on this, it'll instead be 9,000 to 10,000 mastery instead of 7,500 to 10,000 mastery on this base mythic eye level version. So it gets a little bit better later into combat. It's probably not hugely different. You're increasing the average mastery that you get by 220 per click, right? So up to 3 times. So it's not hugely different. It's not like, Spy Masters where it was really important later in the fight. This one is just, it gets slightly better on the later uses. We have the Junk Maestro's Mega Magnet, which is an agi trinket. Your damaging abilities have a very high chance to charge the magnet up to 30 times. On use, you can reverse the magnet's polarity to violently recycle buried garbage, dealing plague damage to your target per charge. Lingering Virulence deals 10% of the damage dealt to 5 nearby enemies over 6 seconds. So actually maybe a decent kind of AoE trinket, especially in situations where you charge this up hitting a single target, and then some ads spawn and you can, press this button and do a bunch of damage to that single target and also 10% of it, right? You kind of get 50% more value on this thing if there's AoE, so I guess that's not a lot of extra value. Probably still not a great AoE trinket because it's not giving you... You'd rather just have, 2 stats instead of 1 in most AoE situations, but a 20-second cooldown on the on-use, but that's a little bit deceptive because the real cooldown on this is going to be stack-based, right? Like, you could press this thing every 20 seconds and send 4 stack, polarity reversals, or you could press it every 2 minutes and send a 30 stack, right? And that's kind of the same damage eventually, so it's not really a 20-second cooldown, but it is flexible, right, when you use it. We have Mr. Lockenstock, which is a haste trinket that has equip. Your spells and abilities have a high chance to laze your target for precision blasting, calling in Mr. Lockenstock to deal physical damage to your target. On use, you can recalibrate it for mass destruction. So I don't know exactly what that does, but maybe it does something cool. Maybe this is one of the ones where you kind of switch it between different modes, between precision blasting and mass destruction. Maybe mass destruction is the AoE version of this, and precision blasting is single target version, and on use you can swap it between the two. That would be my guess, I guess. Then we have Mr. Pick-Me-Up, also from Sprocketmonger Lockenstock. This is an int trinket. Your healing spells and abilities have a chance to summon Mr. Pick-Me-Up for 6 seconds, firing a healing beam every 2 seconds that jumps between 5 injured allies to restore a bit over 100,000 health each. Overhealing irradiates allies to deal nature damage over 1.5 seconds, increased by additional overhealing. So one of those kind of healing trinkets that does a little bit of healing, procs, and also if they're already full health, it'll do some damage instead. And it's nice because it's passive, right? This is, you don't have to do any kind of on use here. It just does it all by itself. Then we have Mug's Moxie Jug. The word Moxie is hastily scribbled on. And it's an int trinket that says your spells have a chance to send you into a frenzy, granting you crit for 15 seconds. While frenzied, each spellcast grants additional crit, but does not refresh the duration. This effect may only occur once every 1 second. So basically, whenever this procs, you will then, over the next 15 seconds, if you cast a spell every second, which you probably won't, right? Like, you're probably casting a spell every 1.2 seconds or something. You're probably going to cast 10 spells over the 15 seconds, something like that, right? So over that time, you're going to graduate from 800 to 8,000 crit or 9,000 crit over that time, which, potentially pretty good, especially if this thing procs reasonably often. Then we have the Reverb Radio. This is any primary stat. And it says your spells and abilities have a high chance to hype you up, granting haste up to 5 times. Upon reaching maximum hype, amp it up by 100% for 15 seconds before starting again. So it's basically a primary stat haste stat stick with a little bit of kind of ebbs and flows of haste, but unlike the usual ones where it just kind of goes up and then falls off, this one goes up and then goes way up for a bit and then falls off. So it'll have an interesting little graph to it. Again, presumably just a pretty solid trinket that a lot of people will be interested in. If you like haste, I suspect this one is one that'll either be miss or pretty good. We've got the Scrapfield 9001, which is a strength or agi tank trinket. Falling below 75% health surrounds you, presumably they've missed in the text there, with a protective vortex of junk, reducing damage taken by 50% for 15 seconds or until 1.5 million damage is prevented. This effect may only occur once every 30 seconds. After 20 seconds without activating while in combat, the Scrapfield overloads to energize you with 3,233 haste for 12 seconds. So kind of an interesting trinket. Potentially something that people might try and use as non-tanks as well. The problem with using this as a damage trinket is that you're going to fall below 75% health in hard content kind of all the time, in which case the damage side of this turns off. But when that does happen, you're going to be getting 1.5 million health of healing over the next 15 seconds, which is not nothing. It's not the problem with this as a tank trinket is that's not a huge amount of healing. And also falling below 75% health happens so often that it's not going to reliably happen at times when you're actually in danger. This might be an okay like raid tank trinket because when you are tanking every 30 seconds, you're getting 1.5 million healing, which is a decent little pick-me-up of extra HPS. And when you're not tanking, you're going to have this haste potentially rolling, which haste is a good stat for a lot of tanks. But I'm pretty skeptical of this one. This seems like the kind of effect that is inherently the stuff you're not getting when you need it, and you are getting when you don't need it on this trinket. We've got Torque's Big Red Button, which is a mastery trinket. It's a 3-minute on use, so another 3-minute on use CD trinket. You unleash your Inner Tempest to gain a bunch of strength here for 15 seconds. Your next 3 abilities cause a lightning blast to deal nature damage to your primary target. Damage increased by 100% with each subsequent blast. So it'll deal a total of 3 million nature damage roughly, as well as giving you a bunch of strength. I don't know if this one also gives, works for, let's see if this works for agi. Nope. So presumably this is just a strength trinket. Yeah, this is just a strength trinket off of the second boss as well. So that is worth noting. It's a pure strength 3-minute on use CD thing. So pretty niche button, but potentially quite a big effect on that thing as well. This sort of thing where maybe Unholy DK is going to be really thrilled about just getting a huge amount of stats every 3 minutes, right? And also to Master Trinket, which they will usually like. We've got Vexy's Pit Whistle here, which is a strength agi trinket. It's got a 1 minute 30 seconds, so a 90-second on use that summons Pitbot Geardo to assist you for 5 seconds, coating nearby enemies with rancid motor oil for additional threat. Geardo ensures you take all the blame. So on use, you get threat on all nearby enemies for 5 seconds. It's not like you don't taunt them, you just get a bunch of threat on all the nearby enemies. And then Geardo departs explosively to deal fire damage split between nearby enemies, increased by 15% if recently oiled. So 5 seconds after he's summoned, he'll do fire damage to everybody. And again, you'll probably get the threat on this, so yeah, it's Geardo's doing it, but you're getting the threat. And this is going to do a little bit more fire damage if they've been oiled, although you could still kind of press this before the enemies are in range and just accept that it's going to do 15% less damage, but then actually be there as they spawn or on pull or whatever. But oftentimes, as a tank, the reason you'd make that choice is because you want that snap threat, and you're getting the snap threat even without the damage here. So this is a nicely designed trinket that, as a tank damage trinket, that will get you some threat on pull. Of course, pretty small amount of damage compared to the DPS trinkets, but you're not going to get the tank damage penalty on this, which is, I guess, nice. Then we've got Z's Thug Hotline, which drops for Muggsy Head to Security, so second to last boss. This is a strength agi trinket. And your abilities have a chance to call a member of the Goon Squad to attack your target for 10 seconds. Gaining Bloodlust or a similar effect summons the whole crew. Very cool. Passive trinket, but it amps you up during your lust more than anything else. That's going to be cool. This thing is probably going to be good, I suspect. All right, let's take a look at the very rare items. So we've got Best in Slots, which is a two-handed mace. It's strength agi, but you can also turn it into a spellcast, into an intellect one instead. So this one is very best in slots for Ret/Holy Pallies. Oh wow, it's so best in slot for them. One weapon that works for both specs. But yeah, so it's a two-handed mace, and your spells and abilities have a chance to grant you a bunch of a random secondary for 15 seconds, and then on use in combat, you cheat to immediately gain the maximum effect of your highest secondary for 15 seconds. So basically it's going to randomly proc, and it's like, oh, here's 4,500 mastery, here's 4,700 verse, here's 4,300 crit, and then if you want haste, every 2 minutes you can just press it and you're going to get the full value of your best stat. And the downside of this is that it doesn't have secondaries natively on it. So all of the secondary budget of this is going to be the random procced ones. But the good news is it's got full budget worth of your best secondary during your 2-minute CDs. So I suspect this one will be best in slot. And it's also best in slots. We've got the Capo's Molten Knuckles, which drops from Muggsy, Heads of Security. So this is the second to last boss. And this is a fist weapon that also has no secondaries on it. But interestingly, it's a strength agi fist weapon as well. So maybe something that prop warriors could use, I don't know. That's interesting. You gain a high chance to follow up your attacks with a fiery gilded uppercut, dealing fire damage to your target. Molten gold continues to splatter to deal fire damage over 5 seconds to all nearby enemies. The damage is reduced beyond 8 enemies. So you're giving up secondary stats on this, but you're getting a damage proc that's presumably going to do some good damage on a fist weapon. Again, a strength agi fist weapon. Very cool. Then we've got a cloak. So look at the thing they've done here as well. Last raid, everybody was getting all these very rares from the first 4 bosses. This raid, all the very rares are from the last 4 instead. Each of the last 4 has a very rare. So we've got the Test Pilot's Go Pack, which is a cloak. It's a Mastery Haste cloak. And on use, you increase your movement speed by... I've been disconnected from the server. Okay, as I was saying, on use, you increase your movement speed by 150% and are allowed to skim over water, rapidly diminishing over 1 second. So it's a 2-minute CD. This is mostly... I mean, it's actually nice, right? Like 150% movement speed, rapidly diminishing over 1 second. Let's say that averages out 75% movement speed for 1 second. That's still a nice, little sprint that you can get to help reposition a little bit. That'll be useful in some fights. Skimming over water is tough to imagine that ever being super relevant, but it's cool. And it's, it's a free little bit of bonus text on this thing. As far as very rare effects go, it's, it's pretty small, but it'll be nice to have, right? It'll be nice to have a little bit of an extra sprint. And of course, it's, a max eye level piece that is a Master Haste cloak, which is the main thing that is good about this thing. And then finally, we have the Jastor Diamond, which is a very rare ring that drops from Chrome King Gallywix. I'm not going to give you a detailed receipt of all the businesses I took over, started, sold, or destroyed. I won. That's all. I won everything I wanted. This is a Mastery Haste ring. So it's got an equip that says, take credit for your allies' deeds up to once every 12 seconds, gaining some of their highest secondary stat up to 10 times until shortly after leaving combat. Now, it doesn't say stealing. You just gain some. So you take credit for their deeds, and you gain some of their highest secondary. You have a 10% chance to get caught in the act, transferring all accumulated credit to your ally for 15 seconds instead. So over the 10 stacks, this on average will transfer once, but it might not, or it might transfer early. And you are either getting a bunch of secondaries or you're giving your allies a bunch of secondaries, and it's either you're getting their best secondary, which usually is pretty good, Not most specs have the same good stats as each other, right? Not a lot of people are stacking verse. And when it does proc, and they get it instead, that's also good, right? Obviously, that's less good for you, but it's still good for the raid. So, extremely bis item here, Turbo Bis, for as long as you like Mastery. If you're a spec that doesn't like Mastery, good news. When this drops, somebody else is going to want it. Bad news if you see it in your vault, though. This is going to be a very funny one. If you're one of those specs where your Mastery is like your worst stat, and this thing shows up in your vault, ooh, that's gonna be a tough. Then we've got an extremely rare retrieving item information, which I believe is just the Gallywix mount, and there's a Hearthstone as well from the 4th boss. So yeah, pretty cool. Okay, so that is all the Liberation of Undermine loot. Let's take a quick look at the dungeons. So we've got, there's just one new dungeon from this season. I'm not going to look at all of the Season 2 dungeons, like, the Rookery or whatever. Although if you're interested in seeing all the trinkets and stuff from those dungeons, I made a video back during beta. So you scroll back, 8 months or something on this channel, and you can find that. I don't think there's any text or effects on any of the weapons here, although there is. Kiza's BBBFG. Every girl needs a backup blazing ballistic blunt force gun, is what all that stands for. But yeah, other than that, we've just got a bunch of... we've got another flavor text here on the non-conductive kilo socks for when you're feeling electro cute. And again, a bunch of good names here, but the video's getting long. We're not going to read all these names. But let's take a look at these trinkets real quick. We've got the Dark Fuse Medi Chopper, which is an int trinket. It's a healer trinket that drops off the first boss of the new dungeon. And on use, you command the Medi Chopper to attach to your target, absorbing damage and granting them verse for 15 seconds. While attached, your healing spells have a high chance to refuel the chopper, granting the bonuses to their host again. We've got this Gigazap's Zap Cap, which is another int trinket. This one is off the last boss instead. Every 6 seconds, zap your target and one nearby enemy for nature damage. Casting 30 spells turbocharges you for 15 seconds, doubling the frequency of your zaps and upgrading them into Gigazaps, which deal 270,000 nature damage instead. This seems like it'll be quite a bit of damage, especially in a 2-target situation. When you get to those Gigazaps, and it's every 3 seconds you're doing 270,000 to 2 targets, so that's like 200k DPS during those 15 seconds to 2 targets if you are while you're overcharged. Then we've got the improvised Sephorium Pacemaker rather. Not a Peacemaker, a Pacemaker. It's just crazy enough to work. It's a strength agi trinket. Repurpose a Sephorium charge to give your heart a kick, causing your first ability every 60 seconds to trigger explosive adrenaline, which gives you crit for 15 seconds. So this is pretty nice if you're a 1 minute or 2 minute class, as long as you're pressing them on CD. If you ever delay a cooldown, then unfortunately this is going to get desynced automatically. But otherwise it's basically, a crit on use every 60 seconds. And while you're exploding, crit strikes cause you to blow up again, extending this duration by 1 second up to 15 times. So if you crit 15 times during this window, it's instead got 30 seconds up, 30 seconds down of a decent amount of crit. So it's kind of just a strength agi crit stat stick, but only up for half the time. Then we've got the Ringing Ritual Mud. Fear the Old Mud is the flavor text on this one. It's a versatility tank trinket, I believe. On use, you become Mudborn, absorbing 2.6 million damage and pulsing for nature damage over 10 seconds. Periodic damage you take coalesces into pungent mud to feed the ritual, reducing this cooldown by 2 seconds, and it's a 2-minute CD. So if you're in a situation where you're taking dot damage, maybe you can press this once a minute instead, but, it's a pretty small shield. This sort of thing, it's probably a decent little tank trinket to start the season with, something like that, but probably not something that you're super thrilled about long-term as a tank. Then finally, we have Cujo's Flame Vents, which look like they're a new trinket that drops from Cujo in Workshop, Mechagon Workshop, a returning dungeon. This is an agi or strength trinket. On use, channel for 2 seconds, venting fire damage to all enemies within 8 yards. So you have to channel this, and you flame vents, just like the boss, Cujo, does. Mechanical enemies become superheated, taking bonus fire damage from your next attack. And then it has the same text as an equip effect as well. So I assume this is mostly just the on-use here, and this is not fully implemented yet. It's just data mined. 2-minute CD on this thing as well. So, an agi strength 2-minute channel for damage trinket. will live or die based on, of course, how much damage it does. Even if this is good, it's going to be a little clunky against mechanical enemies. Maybe a little bit of extra value as well, which there are some in both the raid, the new dungeon, and of course, workshop, which is in this season. All right, that's it for our look at these trinkets, items, stuff like that. There'll be more PTR videos coming out over the next few weeks, primarily the raid testing videos, which should be, we've got one raid testing, which is tomorrow as the time of recording this. It's just a heroic early boss. It's like the second boss on heroic of the raid. So I will make a video on that. It's not like a, super, there won't be a deluge of content, but then starting next week and the week after, there's going to be like all the remaining bosses tested on both heroic and mythic, except for Chrome King Gallywix. So that is going to be like 15 videos that will be coming out over that time. So look forward to those if you want to see a preview of what the raid looks like. If you don't want spoilers, probably mute this channel for like a month or something, or maybe until the patch comes out. But yep, that's it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed these trinkets and items as much as I did. I'm very excited for the flavor of this patch. I think there's inherently, like, I like the casino vibe, the goblin vibe in general. But one thing I really like about it is it seems like goblins give the Blizzard devs permission to go a little crazy with some of these items and the names, the effects, the flavor text, all that kind of stuff. So I like it when you can kind of tell that they were having fun with this all. Anyways, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.